The supplier die event has been going on for a few weeks now and won't be around much longer. Is that all it's been? Yeah, feels longer. I've been a bit rough out there. I haven't seen my Orson apartment in weeks. You don't even want to imagine what this armor smells like. I'm sure I don't. Do you have any helpful tips, advice for other would-be suppliers out there? Don't? I don't know. Always remember your crews. Not sponsored, by the way. Hey, you ever gonna post that video about how I rented the 600i and it expired, and then I got chased into Pyro? Yeah, we'll get to that. Good luck out there. The supplier die event has been a mixed bag for a multitude of reasons, from balancing to game loop breaking bugs, not to mention the average Star Citizen bugs that just make everything more difficult. But according to an email I got, we only have a little bit of time left to finish the event. So let's go over all the ways to do that if you haven't yet, or you haven't even tried because it hasn't seemed worth it. I'll go over each option and how to avoid any setbacks along the way. You know, this is if you want to try to finish it before the end so you get the points and the paints, or you're just trying to get a piece of that sweet, sweet cash. First up, we have the dreaded terminals. If you've been on Reddit or Twitter or wherever, you've seen the posts. People standing in line in a game to buy stuff to take somewhere else. I guess they only stand in line the one time. I was gonna say they stand in line again. Some even actually literally died there. You can still buy the resources for the event if you can find them in stock at a terminal. I should clarify, if you can find them in stock at a station. I say that because Stanton outposts just do not work in any region on any shard. This was one of my first major issues with the event. Before, back in 3.2.4, actually, if you remember the last phase of the Save Stanton event, I was able to server hop in order to get to an outpost where the elevators actually worked, and I was able to get the resources to go finish that mission. Now, the only time I've seen these outposts work is in the 4 to 5 hour window after server maintenance. I think that only happened once during this whole event. And that was just enough time for me to get around 800 SKU of the 900 so SKU of copper I bought off of Microtech. I still lost that 100 or so to the outpost elevators as they started to bug. We'll go over all the issues with the event towards the end of the video, but this felt like a big one on the trading side. Considering Magnus Gateway had the copper and the corundum for the Stanton side, it was almost always sold out. And granted, you're paying more now than you were at the start of the event, but if you do want to try to buy copper and corundum, I would try doing so at Seraphim and Bahini Point, as you can get maybe 8 SKU a pop, as opposed to the 0 at Magnus. Copper's at Seraphim, corundum's at Bahini Point. I don't like waiting in line IRL, so I definitely wasn't going to do it in a video game. I actually visited most of the different outposts that sell the materials, but you heard how that went. And I had already said I was going to learn mining, so guess what I went and did. I figured it was time to rent a prospector. I'm going to go over the supplier die mining specifics here, but if I'm able to, I'll do a slightly more in-depth guide here. I will link Ferrister's mining guide down below because it's the one I use to learn, and it's super helpful for all of the basics of mining and should get you well on your way. I don't want to do a full mining guide because personally I'm sick of rocks. I never had to see another asteroid. Sometimes you don't, that's the fun part, you don't see them. They're invisible. Look out for those. I started with scminingmommy.com, yes, a real website, but it seems that hasn't been updated for Pyro, and some of the Stanton info wasn't up to date either. So I suggest regolith.rocks, and I'll be sharing a lot of info from that. A great Star Citizen mining website that for some reason has AI artwork instead of Star Citizen screenshots for reasons that I can't fathom when we have the space photography simulator. Anyway, mining. The good news is, mining has the steepest learning curve, the most specific tools, and the most variety of ways to do the same thing. Thankfully, specific to supplier die, things are a bit more straightforward. You can rent the solo mining prospector or the multi-crew mole at any cargo deck or refinery deck in Stanton. So just about every station in Stanton, I think. I suggest starting with the prospector to get comfortable with the mining loop, and then you can move on to soloing the mole, or obviously grab some other players and crew up for the most efficiency. The main thing this affects, besides the rental price, is what size rocks you can take on. The other main factor to this being which laser you use. The prospector takes size 1 lasers, the mole takes size 2, and if you think, I'm renting, I'm stuck with the stock parts, you're not with mining ships anyway. You hop in the pilot seat, press right Alt K, and I believe in the prospector it'll pop up. I never had it pop up in the mole, but it will show ship ports unlocked. Once you've done that, you're able to remove the stock lasers on the ship and then install your own. If you don't want to pay for lasers every time you rent, be sure to take them off before your rental timer runs out. The Hofstede 1 for the Prospector and the Hofstede 2 for the Mole, I would say, are the best all-around lasers. Actually, for the Mole, I swapped the right side out with the Lancet, and there's even more powerful lasers you can go with once you actually get comfortable with the whole loop. I would suggest against going with the strongest possible laser from the jump. I will say, I've all this mining, I never blew up my ship with a rock. I blew up the ship with an invisible asteroid. What? But I did not blow it up via the mining itself. The Helix is one of those more powerful lasers if you want to try it. However, I will say once I upgraded the lasers on the Mole, there were very few asteroids I ran into that I couldn't solo, especially if I was using gadgets and modules. I'm not going to go into those here, but I used the Ryman Surge on the Hofstede and the Brandt and Surge on the Lancet. Just remember, you actually have to activate these modules if you're using them. You can attach those with a tractor beam to the laser before you install it on the rental ship. If you're familiar with Salvage, mining isn't that much different with the scanning aspect. You're looking for specific numbers, flying to those, and then doing the mining. For supply or die mining, you have your choice of copper and corundum on the Stanton side and tin and ice on the pyro side. You can only mine tin and ice in pyro, and while you can find copper and corundum there, I wouldn't mine it there. It's not nearly as plentiful anywhere in pyro, and then transporting it through pyro and the jump gate seems like you're asking for trouble. I ended up going with Stanton for the event because I was already there after the update, and I had previously just spent enough time in pyro. I started my mining journey in the Prospector in the Aaron Halo, which is an asteroid belt in between ArcCorp and Hurston, and it's not marked anywhere, or I think even mentioned in the game. It's mentioned in the lore somewhere because it has a name, but I thought it was kind of cool to go to a place that, isn't directly pointed out to you. So that was fun, but it wasn't actually the best place to do the job. I got an okay amount of corundum there in my initial Prospector runs, but the best places I found to mine for the event are Crusader L5 for copper and Hurston L2 for corundum. It's kind of interesting because neither one of these are the #1 listed spot on Regolith rocks. Regolith had Microtech L4 at 100% for copper, but whether it was mined out or not, I just didn't have any asteroid spawn there, and certainly not enough to fill up an entire mole full of copper. Crew L5 was stacked, and I was actually using the old info from SC Mining Mommy, so I wasn't even looking for the best asteroids. For copper, those are Q-type 1870, M-type 1850, and P-type 1750 in that order. For corundum, I preferred Hurston L2 for similar reasons, even if Arc L4 and Mick L1 are supposed to be better. Those signatures are P-type again, 1750, M 1850, and S 1720. Also mined corundum on Clio, one of the moons of Microtech, as it has the highest values, but I felt like you got a lot less per rock and it felt a bit slower overall. But it's convenient for refining, as Microtech L2 is a close second refinery for corundum, and it's still an easy trip from Hurston L2. If you do have some mining experience and you prefer surface mining, Clio is the go-to for corundum, while Euterpe, Aberdeen, and Daymar are the best for copper, with Euterpe also having corundum. Corundum surface rocks are obsidian, felsic, granite, and gneiss, and copper is attic, quartzite, and shale. The best copper refinery is Microtech L5, but I went with the close second again at Arc L2, as I was already running out of Arc L1 to do all of my mining operations. And then there's the tin and ice and pyro. I didn't mine in pyro because I spent all my time learning in Stanton, and I wasn't going to go do it all again in dirty, dusty pyro. We're just going to get murdered for some refined ice. But I do have everywhere you need to go if you want to. Some of the benefits here is that I think you need less to complete some of these orders, and you get paid more because pyro is dangerous. But I feel like every time I'm playing Star Citizen, people are asking about both resources, if not ice by itself, and not being able to find it. And I think I have an idea as to why. We'll get into that. For tin, Adir, Fuego, and Pyro 4 are all best. You'll be looking for Igneous 1950, Granite 1920, and Shale 1730. If you prefer asteroid mining, you can head over to cluster KKE 717, Rab Kilo, Victory, or Bravo, and look for M 1850, Q 1870, or C 1700. I will say none of these values are super high, so surface mining might actually be your best bet for tin. For ice, you're going to want to head to Rab Sierra, Cook, Roth, or Ultra, and look for type 1660. It's the only type of asteroid with ice. Remember that signatures can also show up as multiples of the base signature when more than one asteroid is present. So 2 P-type at 1750 show up as 3500 on the scan. You can refine at any main station in Pyro, whether it's Checkmate or Bitroy or Ruin, or any of the gateways. Is it either gateway? How many gateways are in Pyro? I don't know. The one works. But I'd focus on refining at the delivery station, even if they tend to rotate. The refining process is fairly straightforward. All I'll say is that I've been using Farron if I want things to go quicker and don't mind paying more, or Dynex if I don't mind it taking up to 3 days. Since the event's almost over, I would suggest, especially if you have the extra money, go with Farron. After refining, you're going to need a cargo ship to deposit your refinery order on. This is part of the mining process we'll talk about more in a little bit. But something super important that I'm not going to wait to lump with the other bugs, make sure your cargo ship is a fresh claim. What I mean by that is that you've gone to the ASOP terminal and you have claimed this ship at the refinery location. If you have rented the ship at that same location, all you have to do is deliver it. That's fresh. There is a bug that is linked to auto storing of ships. If you have a ship that you brought up or landed in your hangar, and then you've gone to the elevator either before it's finished storing or without storing it yourself at all, that has auto stored. And if you want to be 100% sure, I wouldn't trust that at all. Some people have said that as long as you bring the ship up yourself, send it back down, and watch that complete, that's enough. Other people have made it sound like that didn't work for them. I have never had an issue as long as I freshly claimed a ship, and then from there on made sure that I watched it store every time. Should you try to put refinery cargo on a ship that has been auto-stored, the cargo, I would say, has the potential. The cargo will lock to the grid, and nothing you do can get it off the grid, not even blowing up the ship. This is a bug that you can only prevent. You can't fix it. Once you put your refinery order on your cargo ship, you can bring it up at the location, take the cargo off, and immediately store it wherever you're at, or hop in your cargo ship and transport it to wherever you need it to go. Once you have enough materials for a mission, accept it, bring up the materials, send the materials back down. If you go over, you should get that amount refunded to your inventory. I have seen multiple people mention that this returned cargo is not usable for future turn-ins for the event. I don't think there's a workaround for that either, sadly. Mr. Kraken has made this great one page if you want to break down money versus points, depending on, which one you want more. I will link that down below. Mining, I mean, it makes you really want to do the event, doesn't it? Makes you wonder why you hadn't started weeks ago. Well, you should have. If you haven't started yet, I don't even know why we're doing this video, to be honest. Next up, salvaging. I love power washing in space. I feel like more players have tried salvaging versus mining. The Vulture has been the meta money printer since about whenever it released. But you also have to buy your way into salvage since none of these ships are rentable. This means 2.6 million AUEC for a Vulture, or real money for a Vulture, Fortune, or Reclaimer. You can buy the Reclaimer in game, but I don't think... If you didn't do that before the event, you're probably not doing it now. You probably do it after the event, once you're rich. That is to say if you don't team up with other players, obviously. Obviously, a Reclaimer can make quick work a lot of these missions with enough ships to feed on. For the Vulture, dual braids are still the way. You can pick one of those up at the Stanton Gateway. And if you want to be as sneaky as possible in Pyro, try out this stealth build, which I'll link down below. All the salvage contracts turn in Pyro, so like I said with the Copper and Corundum, I wouldn't transport RMC and CM from Stanton through the Pyro Gateway, all the way through Pyro. That seems like asking for trouble. I haven't finished all the salvage contracts yet, but I actually started doing them in Pyro. And while there are salvage contracts in Pyro, they can get you into the negatives as far as construction material and munching is concerned. And I thought that I had started leveling those before, but they're still just giving me arrows as salvage contracts, so not very useful. Since you can get 37 to 40 RMC in a Vulture per run, I plan to focus on that and then construction materials after I have a decent stock of RMC. I'm looking to turn in 5 smalls and 1 medium, which is around 91 RMC and 175 construction material. Besides paying for the contracts, as always, asteroid fields and outposts are still good places to find empty ships. Just keep your eyes out for other players. I somehow ended up with enough Citizens for Prosperity rep without doing that many missions that headhunters are hostile to me, so it's easier to do this if you go to an outpost you're affiliated with or at least neutral with. And unlike Stanton, you don't have to be a certain amount away from a space station or an outpost so that you can either salvage or munch on any of the ships. You will still have to make sure shields are off for salvage and that power is off in order to fracture. And lastly, on the recycled material composite side, I don't think that there was an asteroid base or a cluster that I went to that didn't have at least 5 panels to scrape right when I got there. So, plenty of RMC out there. Next, we have player trading. Plenty of players have odd amounts of materials left and are happy to sell them at near market prices. I bought some corundum off of somebody for about market, and they were nice enough to throw in some copper for me. So those players are out there. This can be a good way to fill out your contract orders or, get you to that next one to boost your payouts. And last but not least, Deditrine. Does anybody even remember that this was part of the event? Not quite the pyro version of Jump Town that everyone hoped for, and still tied to outpost elevators that may or may not work. It's by far the riskiest option for the event. I wouldn't suggest doing it solo unless you find yourself on a low pop server late at night sometime this week. Maybe I'll try that. It wouldn't be Star Citizen without some bugs, and some of them, like the aforementioned refinery bug, are so game-breaking and so constant and consistent that I'm not sure how there aren't official warnings around the event. It felt like everyone new to mining lost one refinery order to that bug, which isn't even new. Issues like that also bring to light things like refinery orders not being in line with the cargo updates. You can't just send it to your local inventory. You want to update the bags on your prospector so they can hold more? You can definitely do that, but you need to put a layer of crates so that they don't fall through the cargo elevators when you try to bring them up so that you can put them on your ship. Similar for mining lasers. Definitely don't store them with modules attached because they're almost impossible to get out of the elevator. The Stanton Outpost elevators barely lasting for 4 to 5 hours after maintenance really crippled the trading options for the event. Instead of half a dozen locations for each material, there's 4 stations total. It seems pyro outposts were slightly more functioning, I guess. With contested zones continuously having issues, it doesn't seem like pyro is safe from these problems either. Frequent extended trips also show the quantum refueling bug as another seemingly constant issue, especially with ships of those sizes. If you don't store after refueling, the refuel doesn't count. Slightly more minor things like the missions not accepting the cargo when it's sent down, requiring a server or region hop. Just another example that Star Citizen doesn't really feel any more ready for all of this content than it was for all of the new features. This year feels like they're focusing on Star Citizen as a live service, potentially as a marker for player engagement and retention, which is great. Many of the additions and attempts at narrative are totally welcome. I just like to see CIG own the bugs inherent in any of the loops tied to these events, to respect the player base a little bit more. Global chat is great, but it can't get you back your 80 SKU refinery order that just took over 24 hours to get between the mining and the refining. That combined with the fact that we're at least 6 months out for a transit rework or any other refactor, and maybe we should just schedule the maintenance times. It's just a series of band-aids until then. But I am glad the band-aids are working. Have any supply or die tips or experiences you want to share? Let us know down below. And let me know what you think of these rewards and how you feel about how everything's running. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you out there. It had to turn to a life of crime, and I got really sad. But then the whole system ran out of 4 very specific materials, and they let everybody back in because they needed us. That's my story. What's yours? Oh, foip. I want my lips to move more. Face towards camera. Look in the direction of in-game camera. My armor is very blue. Blue. No. Blue. Blue. My lips won't do blue. 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 Not getting it. We'll try again next patch. Hope you had fun mining. I sure did. See you next time. 07 citizens. 100 Eye Enjoyer out. Can I salute while sitting down? I don't think it works, to be honest. I can barely grab this cruise bottle. What if I... Nope, that does nothing. What? It worked. So I can do that. Then it clips into the table, and that doesn't look good. But, oh, it must be empty. Oh, it's empty after I drank it. In the other scene.